Okay, in the interest of everyone's time, we want to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Sherry Spotke. I'm the PIO at Westminster Police Department, the Public Information Officer, and I do all of our community outreach and public education. And tonight I am joined by my boss, Sergeant Ray Esslinger, Mr. Lamar Sims from the Adams County District Attorney's Office, and three of our auto theft detectives, Clayton Mager, Steve Sanders, and Richard Fletcher. I want to give you guys about a 15 or 20 minute presentation from our auto theft detectives, and then open it up to questions and comments. There is a chat feature on your webinar. If you want to put your questions in there, I can ask them as we go. We're expecting quite a few people to join us tonight, so we want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So throw those in the chat or the question box as we go, and if they don't answer them with their presentation, we'll ask them and get you guys the answer. So guys, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sherry. My name is Steve Sanders. I am one of the core auto theft detectives here at Westminster PD. Sherry said I'm here with Detective Fletcher and Detective Mager. I'm one of 3.5 full-time employees we have working motor vehicle thefts here in the city right now. Our unit has been active for as long as I've been at the PD. I think between the three of us here, we have several dozen years of experience. We have another detective, Detective Melee, who's been in the auto theft world for at least a dozen years. I've been in my position here for 6 years. Detective Mager and Detective Fletcher have rotated up into our unit over the last few years. So we've been working primarily auto thefts for several years, as I said. Sherry asked us to come on today to talk about the motor vehicle theft crime or motor vehicle theft issue in Westminster. We just wanted to go over some of the things we're doing and what we're seeing, and some of the patterns we're seeing in the last couple of years. As many of you may have heard or seen on the news, Colorado is actually has become the #1 per capita auto theft state in the country. That's new since I've been up here the last 6 years. Just over the last couple of years, we've seen a significant increase in Colorado. I believe since 2019, auto thefts in the state are up well over 100%. In 2021, we had 1,231 motor vehicle thefts in the city. We use a few different databases, and those numbers change at very minor changes as those databases are updated and things change. But 1231 is the number we use in our unit, and that's a 63% increase just over from 2020. So if you consider that, that's about a little over 3 cars that are stolen per day in Westminster. We recovered well over 900 cars last year. So that's including the motor vehicle theft reports we've taken. Over 900 cars were recovered by police officers on patrol in the city last year. It's a little over 2.5 cars a day on average. So we're seeing a very significant increase. It does tax our patrol guys, our investigations unit very heavily. That's something we're working on every day. The recovery rate in our city is right around 89%. So of the 1,231 cars that were stolen last year, so far about 90%, 89% have been recovered. That's pretty close to the statewide average. Statewide average is usually about 90%. So we do recover quite a few of those cars. But the recovery rates can be a little bit deceiving. We talk about we recover these cars, we go out and we find these cars, but in many cases they're stripped, they've been heavily damaged, they've been used for smoking of all kinds of illegal substances. So many times they may be recovered, but they're not in a state that they can be used by the owner. As we all know, the people that were most affected by this are people in the may have a lower income status that can't afford to have full coverage for their cars and don't have the wherewithal to pay for that insurance. So there, a lot of times, I'd say a significant amount of those recoveries are not usable by the owners. And the one thing we know about stolen vehicles in this state is it's not one criminal just stealing a car so he can drive around and visit his friends or whatever he wants to do. Almost all these cars are used for other crimes. We're talking shootings, robberies, thefts. I mean, they run the gamut. Almost every violent crime we come across, a stolen vehicle is used in the commission of it at some point. So you have that video, Sherry? I'd like to show everyone a video. This is just an example of a typical auto theft. I'll let this run and explain to you what you're looking at. So here, if you pay attention to it's kind of hard to see at the very top there, there's I believe it's a silver GMC diesel. So the suspect here just drove in. You'll see him turn around and come back on the screen in a second. So we don't. So you can see the suspect jump out of this car and hop in that diesel right there.
At the time too, the truck is locked. It has a factory-equipped alarm system on it.
So you see, I'm going to play this for you. If you notice the time from when he jumps out of that suspect vehicle and gets in the stolen car there, it's about 25 seconds. So he's able to bypass that lock, punch the ignition, and get that thing started in less than 30 seconds. We're seeing this more and more often. We very rarely see auto thefts where it's some kid stealing his mom's car, or those happen, but a majority of these auto thefts are professional thieves who've done this before, who are versed in what kind of cars to target, how to target these cars, and where they can find these cars to easily pick up. So the big thing everyone wants to talk about, and it's always on our mind, is what's the causation? What's causing all the auto thefts in the state and in our city to increase so heavily? I don't think there's anybody who'll tell you there's one determining factor that we can address, that we can point to one thing and fix that specific problem, and that's going to solve all of our auto theft issues. But we do know that in my experience and just looking at the numbers, the beginning of this problem with the auto theft seemed to correlate with the decriminalization of drugs. So as drugs became more prevalent in the cities, as we're seeing more fentanyl running rapid through the cities and through Westminster in particular, the criminals are using these cars as a means to facilitate, to obtain, to transport these drugs. And as that started to increase, I mean, obviously it didn't help when COVID hit in 2019. So we started to see an increase with as the lax drug laws started to come into effect. We started to see a little bit of decrease in 2017, 2018. We were down about 15 to 20%, and then 2020 hit, auto thefts in the state just skyrocketed. And there's a couple things that coincided with that. If you look at some of the policy changes in the county jails, it directly correlates with the increase of auto thefts. So right around March of 2020, Jefferson County and Adams County had to change their policies. They weren't accepting crimes related to motor vehicle theft. Essentially, at the time, they were only accepting violent crimes or crimes that had a victim attached to them, or a person's crime, we call them. So as that changed, the criminals started getting more bold, and we were seeing it on the street. People were trying to use the system. They know he was going to jail. We see repeat offenders that we were just having to walk out the front door because we just couldn't get them into jail. So as COVID's gone on and you know the numbers are changing and going back and forth, it's really hit and miss whether the jails will accept people with property crimes, even though many of these are felonies, and we're talking about repeat offenders. It's hard to get them in jail, and it's hard to keep them in jail. If we can get them in jail, oftentimes they'll be PR bonded almost fairly quickly, and they're out on the street again. So another issue we have that's obviously not that's contributing to this is just the staffing issues we have here at the department and around Colorado. It's hard to hire officers right now, and we have record numbers of officers either leaving the state or just leaving the profession altogether. So it's affected our ability to be proactive in a lot of areas. The criminals know this, and they take advantage of it as much as they can. We've also had recent legislation that isn't going to help. A lot of the motor vehicle thefts that used to be felonies based on the value of the car are going to be changed to misdemeanors. So essentially, if you had a $2,500 truck you took to work every day full of your tools, if somebody stole that, we could charge them with a felony and put them into the system, and then it was sometimes easier to get them into jail if they were being jailed on a felony. Starting in March, they're changing the limit on the value for auto thefts. So now if for the person who has this, you know, the car they take to work every day that they're just getting by, and it's maybe not as worth as much as, you know, somebody else's car that can afford the insurance and everything to cover it. When those cars are stolen, these cars that are valued under $2,500, these are going to become a misdemeanor. So essentially, they're going to get a summons, and if things stay the way they are now, we won't be able to jail them in the county jails. The county jails just won't take misdemeanors. Criminal trespasses used to be a felony, so if somebody broke in your car, smashed the window out, stole whatever they like to take, the money, laptops, whatever's in your car, tools are a big thing. Those are now becoming misdemeanors. And one of the other huge issues we see right now, and I'm sure everyone's heard about it, are the catalytic converter thefts. Right now, we just don't have a good statute to address this issue. We find people with cars full of catalytic converters, and since we can't, in most cases, identify a victim, we can't charge those thefts. It's just the theft statute isn't addressing that particular issue right now, and hopefully we can get that changed. But something in the legislative side needs to change to help us address this cat theft issue. And I know there's some movement on that. Hopefully, some things will change in the future, and we can start addressing that problem in the street on patrol. So another one of the issues that we see with motor vehicle thefts and several other crimes, but it's not any different with other property crimes, and motor vehicle theft in particular, are problems with bond conditions, with probation, with parole, and ultimately sentencing, things which are out of our control, out of the police department's control, but we have to deal with every day. So the typical lifespan for somebody who's been arrested motor vehicle theft, in my experience, if you're arrested for motor vehicle theft, hopefully we can get you in jail. I would say it's about 50-50 whether we can get somebody in jail right now. If they're not put in jail, we issue them a warrant, and sometimes the jail won't even accept their warrants. So assuming we are able to get them in front of a judge and get a court date, oftentimes, just because the courts are very backed up right now, just because of COVID and some other things, but we'll see a lot of offenders get probation, which in and of itself, could be a good thing. But the problem now is with probation itself, because offenders can't be violated other than crimes. What we're seeing is drug addicts and people with other issues are being put on probation, but they can't be violated for having what we call a hot UA, or having a drug test that comes back positive for fentanyl or methamphetamine or these other things. They can't be violated for not complying with the terms of their probation. Essentially, the only way I see them getting violated for probation is if they commit a new crime. At that point, they'll, in many cases, just be put on probation again. There's at least a couple chances there before they end up seeing any actual jail time. We see this with offenders all the time. We talk to them. We interview a lot of these motor vehicle thefts, and one of the things they often talk about is the lack of repercussion is the reason they continue to. They're not really worried about what will happen to them if they're arrested. They know that there's a good chance they're going to walk out the door if they're caught in a stolen vehicle. They'll tell you that a lot of these crimes they're committing to sustain their drug habits, and most of these criminals will tell you the only time they have to reflect on what they're doing and try and sober up is if they end up in jail for a couple of days. And at the very least, that'll give them a few days to sober up. They can sort of interrupt that cycle of criminal behavior that we're seeing a lot. I can give you a few examples just of people we've come across. Right now, I'm working a guy who's a prolific auto thief. When he started, I realized that he was on parole. So I called his parole agent just to see if he had any information on this guy and what he could tell me. And what I learned was that he had been on parole for about 6 months, and he was due to terminate his parole in another 30 days. And the parole officer, just let me know he had never spoken to this man. The parolee had never come in and talked to him. He didn't have any phone numbers for him. He had no idea what was going on with him, but that wasn't enough to violate his parole. I mean, he was out committing all kinds of auto thefts, but within 30 days, he was released from parole, even though he hadn't complied with it at all. We have another female we're working right now that she's very cooperative with us and talks about the issues that we've talked about today. She's addicted to drugs. She's been on probation for numerous previous auto thefts, and she's continuing to commit these crimes to try to sustain this drug behavior. And even she will tell us that it's kind of crazy the way things are going, because it's like I said, going to jail was the only time she was able to sober up and have some kind of reflection on what's going on, and that was the only time her criminal behavior got interrupted, even if it was for just a couple months while she was trying to go through her court cases. But there was really no downside for her to keep committing these crimes. Just this morning, we arrested a guy. He was in a stolen motor vehicle with a friend of his. He was a convicted felon, a known gang member. He had a 14-page criminal history and 5 active arrest warrants. And we were unable to get him in jail this morning. We had to release him from the PD out into the city. So this is a typical type of offender we're seeing. As more and more people are being arrested and there aren't a lot of consequences, we're seeing a lot more repeat offenders committing auto thefts. They know for better or worse, they know the police can't pursue them anymore. You know, there's several sides to that coin that just over the years, over my career, I've seen we've had to really clamp down on who we're choosing to chase just due to the danger. These auto thieves don't really care about the other people on the road. We can chase them all day long. They're almost always going to end up in a serious injury or a death, and more times than not, it's a innocent civilian or an officer who ends up getting hurt in those things. So, like I said, for better or worse, we just can't pursue a lot of these vehicles, and the criminals have realized that, and they're taking advantage of that. And they know if they run in a stolen car, their likelihood of being caught is a lot less than if they're running on foot or driving a car that registers. So finally, Sherry, do you have that strategy slide there at the end you want to put up there? So just talking about a few possible strategies we continue to talk about. Just prevention strategies, just to start with. These are the things you can do to keep your car from being stolen. Just make sure you're not leaving it running or unattended. I was just talking to somebody at one of our task forces. This is the first, 2021 was the first year that a majority of the stolen cars were produced after 2010. The reason that's significant is right around that year is when they started producing cars with security features like chip keys. And, you know, those have been around a long time, but they are very good at preventing your car from being stolen if you have as long as you have your keys with you. There's not a lot of the thieves are technologically advanced enough to bypass a car with that kind of security feature. So what we're seeing more now is a lot of puffers that are being stolen, cars that are left running unattended. We're seeing a lot of rental car steals, fraudulent purchases from dealerships, places where they can obtain these cars with the keys. So just making sure you aren't leaving it unattended, you're not leaving valuables, don't leave your spare keys in the car. These criminals know exactly where to look. If you can park your car in a well-lit area. One of the big issues we see, which always surprises me, is the theft of firearms in a car. Too many people are leaving these firearms unattended in vehicles that are parked in front of their house or wherever they be. And a lot of people think they're secure if I lock them in the car and I lock gloves in the apartment. That's just not true. We constantly are seeing firearms being stolen from cars, and they are inevitably used in some kind of violent crime, some kind of robbery or something of that nature. So really, there's some things we can hopefully start to address as manpower in the city increases, as we have the opportunity to continue to be more proactive throughout the city. These are a lot of things that should help as time goes on and we're able to staff that. But really, a statewide remedy to this situation needs to be addressed at the legislative level. We need some creative solutions at the prosecution side of this. We can charge them and try to put them in jail as much as we can, but if we can't get the county jails to accept them or have some type of proportionally severe punishment for them, it's just going to continue. So at this point, those are the things we're working on. We're going to try to continue to invest in technology. We have our department's really focused on a lot of the technology we have through the city. We have license plate cameras, license plate readers that we use to recover lots of stolen cars throughout the year. You may see some of the patrol cars driving around with cameras. We try to use those and as much as we can, and we recover all kinds of cars and develop all kinds of intelligence with those. So I think with a continuation on that, we're going to have a positive impact on this. And I know everyone here at the department understands the reality of the situation here, and it's a significant priority for everyone here. So.
And then as well to see with the club program we were able to do earlier in the year, we distributed about 40 clubs out to the citizens through CAPPA, which is a grant funded. Mostly it was all grant funded, plus it's our vehicle registration goes towards that as well.
Yeah, so I think $1.50 for your vehicle registration every year, or no, your insurance actually every year goes towards the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority. And they put on a lot of good training. They put on a lot of good programs like Detective Fletcher said, the club program. If you're interested in club for your car, get a hold of one of us here at the PD, and we'll see what we can do to provide that. I know throughout the state, we're starting an initiative to try and mark a lot of the catalytic converters with a vehicle identification number. We participated in some of that effort to get these catalytic converters at least get a VIN number put on them so we can identify them when they're stolen. So there's a lot of programs. If you ever want to hear about them or know about that, I'm always available. You know, all of us are always very happy to speak with the citizens, and I know it's frustrating for a lot of you who have had suffer through this, and trust me, we feel for every one of you that has to deal with this, and we're working towards the solutions we can, and that's where we're at right now.
Great, thank you guys. We've had a couple questions come in that I just want to read out to you, and I think we kind of answered the first one from Kay, but let's just touch upon it again. She asked, is Westminster hit harder than neighboring cities? If so, do we have looser laws that would encourage people to steal more in our city?
Can you repeat that last part, Sherry?
Do we have looser laws that would encourage people to steal more in our city?
Answer that part of it, no. The laws here are not any looser, and I can tell you the group of guys we have back here and our patrol guys and our command staff are very dedicated to out of that, trying to reduce the effect of that on our citizens. As far as the numbers in Westminster, we're not number one, but I would imagine we are in the top 5 per capita of this in the state right now.
And then Teddy asked, garaged or not garaged, and that came in when you were talking about some of the prevention tactics.
Well, I would always prefer to garage it if you can. Just make sure your garage is closed, and 99% of the thefts we see from a garage or somebody left it open, or a lot of times what we'll see is what's that?
No, go ahead.
A lot of times what we'll see is you may leave your garage door opener in your car outside. They'll break into that car, open your garage with that door opener, and they see a car in there, they'll steal that. So
yeah, don't be an easy victim.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, take all your personal property out that you can. Don't make it enticing for them. The club is a great thing for the steering wheel. I mean, they also sell through those locks for like your wheels. So like if you have trailers, because trailer thefts are something as well that are very common as well. On your garage doors, if you can lock it from the inside, there's an option to do that. You know, so when you're locking up your house at night, just press that lock button and it'll deactivate it or won't allow the signal to come in. So just don't be an easy victim. You see how quickly they can steal them.
Yeah, any kind of deterrence you can put on there, they're most likely to move on to an easier target. So whatever you can do to add a little bit of deterrence to the theft of your car will go along.
Juliet has a couple questions here. She says, thank you for this information.
Can't hear you, Sherry.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Juliet has several questions. First of all, she thanks for all of the information. Her first question is, of the 1,000+ car thefts, how many were on residential versus business property? Do we have that number?
that number, but I can tell you, just based on my experience, 75% of these are going to be from residential properties. Not too many that are being taken from businesses, just because there's a lot of traffic in the business areas when the cars are there. So a lot of these happen overnight, and cars are mostly parked at home overnight. So.
Our second question is, individuals like the one you mentioned, who is a continual offender and drug user, we try to direct them to support services to try to get them to stop drug use, such as rehab facilities, etc.
Do we try to do that? I know that's definitely a focus from the courts. I've seen that be successful in several instances. And, you know, when these people are sober, when they can get off the drugs, they're not committing these type of crimes. But with the prevalence of especially fentanyl right now, it's just very, from what I see and talking to people, it's very hard for these people who are addicted to these drugs to stay sober in an area like this, where it's so easy for them to get the pills they need or that they want to fill their addiction. It's just it's very hard for them to stay sober. And like I said, there's not a ton of resources around for everybody, and a lot of the people I see just unfortunately tend to fall through the cracks in the criminal justice system, which is unfortunate for everyone. Like I said, a lot of people just end up on probation, and there's not a lot of oversight there. There's not a lot of reason for them to comply with that. So that's usually what we see as far as the drug side of things.
And when you talk to them too, a lot of addicts, they don't want to be addicts, and they want to get off of it, but that drug is so powerful, and it just runs their life. It destroys their relationship with their family, their friends. And that's what we're saying, is just that the jail just gives them a chance to get sober. And we arrested so many people for motor vehicle theft, you know, that it's drug use is hand in hand. I don't think I've ever arrested a sober car thief ever.
Yeah, it's sort of a myth that these days that these cars are being stolen and, you know, shipped off to Mexico, or there's one syndicate out there, you know, just who runs this and is sending these off somewhere. We see most of these cars getting stripped a lot, but it's mostly just to support either their habit or to support an organization that's moving around these drugs or committing crimes with cars. So,
Mr. Sims, if I could ask you real quick, from a prosecutor and the DA's office perspective, when you are able to put folks in jail for these crimes, is that something that you ask for and some conditions when people are placed in jail for these drug programs while they're in jail?
Yes, Sarge, that's a great question. As Detective Sanders was saying, we see people through all ranges. And particularly if we get the opportunity to make a good case on somebody who is, and I'll use the term, it's probably not a great term, but a career auto thief, somebody who has been preying on the communities for a long time. We look at their criminal history. That is somebody that we will ask for increased sanctions. Every once in a while, we will successfully ask for penitentiary time. But in terms of, I think one of the things that Detective Sanders really hit on is how stressed the system is across the board. He talked a little bit about parole resources, probation resources, and the courts are aware that if we have somebody who is coming into the system for the first or second time, they're not likely to be able to exact that kind of sanction. We see that. I think we're all aware of that. The short answer to your question is it depends. If the conduct is such and the record is such that we think we're going to be able to get a stronger sanction, we will seek it. If we, and I echo what Detective Sanders was talking about, we see over and over the drug hand in hand with the car theft. Invariably, when I read a report of a stolen car, there is going to be either some kind of drug paraphernalia, or we will find some kind of drug, and it's usually fentanyl, on the subject. When we can get somebody into drug treatment, I think, as was mentioned, that can be very effective. But treatment centers are also stressed. It's you know, I have been in this business for a long time. I've got now 36 years of experience in the criminal justice system. And this is a problem that we've been grappling with for a long time. The numbers are staggering right now. And as Detective Sanders was saying, we're seeing them across the region. In answer to one of the questions raised, Westminster is hit hard, but it is not alone in Adams County. A number of the jurisdictions are fighting the same kinds of numbers, and quite frankly, the criminals are moving across the metropolitan area. They don't just pick on Westminster. They don't just pick on Northglenn. Detective, you think that's pretty accurate?
Oh, absolutely. The same criminals that are hitting Westminster, are hitting Denver, Thornton. Yeah, is definitely not a Westminster specific or unique problem.
Sarge, one thing that is a frustration for us, and Detective Sanders talked about it, is it's incredibly difficult for us to make a case if somebody has keys to the car and it's undamaged. And so we are, DA Mason has joined with your agencies and others in really trying to encourage people to not be a victim, as was just said, to not leave their car in the incredibly cold weather and leave it running for 2 minutes while it warms up, to not leave an extra set of keys in, because I'm probably looking at 5 or 6 auto theft cases a week, and I'm one of 4 deputies reviewing cases, so it's probably more than that. And probably maybe 15-20% of them are car thieves that were able to get the car because the keys were in there and the car was unlocked.
Right, and then just to finish out Juliette's question, she said that we mentioned a good number of victims don't have insurance. Generally, victims that are unable to afford insurance. Is this based on direct feedback or looking at data?
This is direct feedback, and I wouldn't say a lot of the victims don't have insurance. A lot of the lower income victims that we see more impacted by auto theft, and I say more impacted just because they may have the basic insurance coverage. They don't have the type of coverage that will allow them to get a rental car while they're waiting for their car to be found, or to have their impound fees covered, or to have their car replaced when it gets recovered and damaged, or with drug use inside of it. And so it's really unfortunate that the people who are struggling the most, maybe financially, are the ones that are most impacted by this. So I don't know that there's a lot of data. This is just personal experience and seeing where they're at. And the truth is, just the people that have the older cars, they are the easier to steal. They have fewer security features, so those are the ones that are more prevalently stolen. It's just easier to steal a 2005 Ford Ranger than it is a newer model Tesla. It's just the way it is. But yeah, those are definitely the ones that struggle the most. We're just trying to get by, going to work, and we all know, cars are our lives. They get us everywhere. They feed our kids. They do everything for us. So.
Teddy kind of has a question, and I think it's an opportunity to explain the process. He states that his car was stolen and recovered in Thornton. It was trashed and totaled. He said, Westminster PD never spoke with me, never took fingerprints, and he was dismayed by this approach. Can you kind of explain how a process works when a vehicle is recovered?
So the normal process for a stolen vehicle is you come in, you report it to Westminster PD, it's stolen in our city, and we enter it into a statewide, a nationwide database as a stolen vehicle. More times than not, your vehicle isn't recovered in Westminster. Most of the vehicles we recover in Westminster are from some other jurisdiction. And that normally in the auto theft world, which is a little different than most crimes, the investigation really starts when that car is recovered, or it should. There's a very heavy focus here in Westminster on encouraging officers to process these cars appropriately. Unfortunately, we don't control the other jurisdictions where some of these cars are recovered. I'll just be honest, some of the bigger jurisdictions have stopped processing outside agency steals that they recover because there's just too many. Here in Westminster, the policy and the expectation is that every car we recover should be fingerprinted, photographed, and we get a hold of the owner of that car. If your car was recovered in Thornton, my experience with Thornton is that they're usually pretty good. Most of the surrounding jurisdictions in Adams County are pretty good about processing cars, but to be honest, it does happen. We get those calls where another agency's recovered a car, there's a bunch of stuff in it, and we do what we can to get out there and try to help, but by the time we hear about the auto theft recovery, it's usually been towed to a tow yard and been handled by, who knows how many employees there. So really, these should be processed when they're recovered, where they're recovered by the agency that recovers them. I mean, that's the best practice. That's what we do here in Westminster. We're part of the Colorado Auto Theft Investigator group. Two of our, myself and another one of our auto theft detectives is part of the board. We really push this theory that, it doesn't matter where these cars are getting stolen. If you're finding them in your jurisdiction, that's where they should be processed and taken care of. So I understand that frustration, though. We feel it here. We get those phone calls more than I like to hear. But right now, all we can do is focus on our agency, and we're doing everything we can to process these appropriately and develop leads. So we also, a lot of the agencies you might have heard of touch DNA. So this came up about 5 years ago when I first gave them investigations. We started swabbing the steering wheels and the driver's headrest area for DNA. And this started to be very successful for us. Unfortunately, it was becoming too successful, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, who processes this DNA for us, just became inundated, and they were not able to process these efficiently. So unfortunately, for CBI, for the agencies that submit evidence to CBI, we can't submit those anymore. So that was a pretty good tool we had that sort of just had to disappear as far as it's related to auto thefts. Some of the other jurisdictions that have different labs, Lakewood, some of the Jefferson County jurisdictions, they still have that tool available to them, and they are very successful with that. So it's the immense increase does have a very detrimental impact on all kinds of areas in the criminal justice system, from the criminalist to CBI to the courts. So, like I said, I can't speak to that specific thing that happened at Thornton, but here in Westy, I would hope that wouldn't happen here. But
Mr. Sims, if I can ask you, sir, when we were able to do that and before the system got bogged down, did that help with your prosecution when we collected DNA of a suspect inside of the stolen vehicle? Did that help?
It can is the best answer. And Detective Sanders alluded to something and that is it's not uncommon for a stolen vehicle to have gone through a number of hands. And so touch DNA alone may not be able to give us a makeable case, but what it can do is help us show an individual in several stolen cars. And once we get to that point, then we are starting to look at building some kind of greater case. It's a wonderful technology. And again, it becomes a resource issue. And so there are times when the Auto Theft Task Force may say, well, we're only going to submit it in this case because we think it links a number of different thieves, as opposed to, again, a situation where it looks more like a one-off. So the short answer, and here again, here's the lawyer saying, it depends. I think, like anything else, it can be a very valuable tool. And I share the frustration that sometimes resources don't let us use it in every situation where we'd like to.
Hey guys, Lawrence asked, if you encounter an active attempt of your car being stolen, what's your suggestion on how to react? Engage, call the police first? How much force can be legally used if your life is in danger or if your life is not in danger?
Well, first of all, call the police. I can tell you in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm shocked by the amount of violence these suspects are using to commit minor crimes. I can think of half a dozen cases just in the last 6 months where people have been shot at, people have been shot over catalytic converter thefts. I mean, I couldn't even count the number of people who've been shot at following their car. I just maybe a month ago, where a victim found his car driving down the road and tried to follow it, which is it's a reasonable reaction. He tried to follow it, and the suspect from that car shot and killed him. So I would be very hesitant to use any force in these. It's really not worth it. I mean, if you can get photos, if there's video, it's great stuff. I call the police, but definitely I would not suggest interacting with any of these guys. They are getting more and more violent, and I just don't want I don't want to see anybody getting hurt over any of this. Can't hear you, Sherry. Sherry, you're muted.
Thanks, appreciate it. If I could mention, I think that it's important to remember, while it would absolutely be horrific to have your car stolen, like the detectives mentioned, it's your way to work, it's your way to provide food for your family, get your kids to school. It's a property crime, and it's not worth losing your life over a vehicle. So we would always suggest to just call 911 if you can take those pictures of those videos. But like the detective said, we're just seeing a more brazen criminal nowadays, and really not worth your life for a vehicle. So, Sergeant Esslinger, I know there were a couple of things that you wanted to mention.
Hello, everyone. I just want to assure everybody that one motor vehicle theft is too many in our city. One person getting hurt or assaulted is too many. I'm going to tell you what we're doing at our police department. Our city council is very supportive in just about anything we ask for at the police department. They all live in our city, care about our city, care about our citizens. Our command staff does their best with some of the cards stacked against us. As you look at 2020, when COVID started running rampant, the jails tightened up their policies on who they would accept into the jail for a couple reasons. A lot of people were sick that worked in the jails. They didn't want the spread of disease in the jails. So what did that do for police officers? We catch these criminals every day. Last night, we recovered 8 motor vehicle thefts. 2 of those vehicles had people inside. Like Detective Standard said, the only reason we were able to get one of those suspects into jail this morning was because he had a robbery warrant. The others had multiple warrants, but the jails wouldn't accept them. Let's talk about manning levels, staffing. I'm sure our police department and all police departments across the country have felt the wrath of the pandemic. Then the unfortunate death of George Floyd, which changed a lot of legislators to change laws, specifically in Colorado. We came up with the reform bill for law enforcement, the accountability for law enforcement. That caused a maximum exodus of police officers from the profession. I'll just share with you something, a number. In 2021, the Westminster Police Department had 37 officers leave our department, some for retirements, some left to go to other agencies in other states, some got out of the profession altogether. That's 37 officers out of our FTE of 199. That void is felt everywhere, and it's not just us. It's with every department. Our recruiter unit works around the clock to put men and women in uniform that are qualified, and not for a second are we going to lower our standards. We're going to do the best we can. But right now at our police department, we have 25 sworn vacancies. We have 3 people in the academy. We have 9 people that just started from other agencies. Those 3 that just started, they won't be ready to hit the street until next year. Those 9 laterals, they won't be ready to go before 2 to 5 months. That leaves a functionality of 41 officers down out of 199. That void is about 20 officers in our patrol. That equates to about 5 officers per shift. Our call load is stacked from the time the officer starts their shift till the end of their watch at the end of the day. Our officers are doing everything they can. The men and women, with what we have, we're doing the best that we can with the resources that we can. And again, it's not just our police department. It's every police department. You see how they're hiring. I'm sure at the DA's office, Mr. Sims, I'm sure you have a lot of vacancies. Our detectives have vacancies. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop doing anything that we can do. We're still going to go and try and catch these criminals. We're going to put them in handcuffs, and we're going to take them to the police department, and we're going to make their day uncomfortable. Now, a lot of times we can't put them in jail, but we're going to book them, and we're going to give them a summons, and we're going to walk them out the door. But that's what we can do, and we're going to do it. We're not going to slow down. But what I would ask all of you to do is contact your legislators, have a conversation with them about the laws that Detective Sanders talked about, the decriminalization of narcotics, the decriminalization of catalytic converters. We need to get some laws on the books that can help our victims. We're doing the best that we can. Mr. Sims, what are you seeing at the DA's office? How is your staffing?
Well, DA Mason is working tirelessly to get us up to full staff, but we are down right now, someplace between 5 and 10 deputies out of our FDEs, and as I said, the DA is doing an incredible job getting us fully staffed. We are looking at an increase in cases filed, thanks to yours and other agencies, with the same numbers. We are looking at an inability to take as many cases to trial because of COVID. So we are just one of a multitude of law enforcement and prosecution agencies that are really working through a very tough time with the numbers and conditions. But we make the same commitment that Sarge, that you just made, and that is we're coming to work every day doing everything we can to hold people responsible for their actions.
And like I said, with all the max exodus of people leaving law enforcement, the men and women going other places, the people you see on your screen, we're in it for the long haul. We're going to do our best and continue to do our best. When you see something, say something, call the police. We're going to give you our best effort. You can count on that. Thanks, Sherry.
So we're coming up on the end of our time here. We don't want to hold you over, but we have a couple more things. One more question and one more statement that I just want to get through before we end it. If there's any more questions, please feel free to put them in there. We'll stick around as long as you guys have questions, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So Indy just wanted to add that want to warn everyone that it's not enough to leave your car unattended and running. Don't sit in a running car, especially while scrolling through your social media or otherwise not paying attention. 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I was carjacked at gunpoint in Arvada. The guy shot through the window, then entered the car and yelled at me to get out. He went on to have a police shootout, a shootout with police. So I'm very sorry, Indy, that happened to you. Obviously, that was very scary, and thank you for joining us. But spot on. Pay attention to your surroundings, like the detectives have talked about. Mr. Lamar Sims and Sergeant Esslinger said, don't make yourself a victim. Pay attention to what's going on. Be mindful, and that's not to place any blame, but these people will take advantage whenever and wherever they can. Remove your garage door openers from your cars that are parked outside. Remove your registrations from your cars. The law says that you have to present it to a law enforcement officer on a traffic stop. You can keep that in your wallet. But if your car does get trespassed in a mall parking lot or at the gym, they now have your home address. I think one of the registrations now doesn't have home address information on it, so you can keep that in your vehicle as well. But just pay attention to surroundings and everything like that. And then Teddy has one final question. Could the use of DNA by Westy reduce car thefts? Westminster may not be a safe place by not using DNA. He says this is kind of depressing, which we understand, Teddy. We don't mean to depress you, but we just want to get out some facts and let you guys know what's going on in your community. And then Teddy says, go get them. So could the use of DNA by Westy reduce car thefts in Westminster, guys?
The short answer, I'd just say yes. Any tool we have to identify and prosecute criminals is going to help reduce.
Okay. Mr. Sims, in closing, do you have anything for us?
Sure, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of my office for the opportunity to participate in this, and I look forward to continuing to work with the department and the city of Westminster.
Great, thank you. I wanted to also mention that on tonight's meeting, Mayor Nancy McNally joined and listened in, so she was well aware of the concerns of the community and what the police department's doing. We want to thank her for taking time and being on tonight, and for all of our panelists, and for all of you that attended, we want to thank you for joining as well. Please, if you have additional questions, my contact information should have been sent to you with the registration. You can certainly email me, and if I can't answer the question, I will get it to somebody on the panel to get those answers for you. So thank you very much. Appreciate everyone attending. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.